Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day, where we will be reciting the 18th stanza of Jup Pauri, which goes as follows. Asank Murkh Andkhor, Asank Chor Haram Khor, Asank Amar Kar Jaye Jor, Asank Galwad Hatya Kamaye, असंख पापी पाप कर जाए, असंख कुड़ियार कूड़े फिराए, असंख मलेच मल पख खाए, असंख निंदक सिर कर है पार, नानक नीच कह विचार, वार्या न जावा एक वार, जो तुद पावे साई पलीकार, तू सदा सलामत निरंकार. Let's begin with a brief line-by-line translation, and then we'll reflect a little bit on the Pauri. Asank Murkh Andkhor translates into countless fools live in blind ignorance. Now, Gurbani refers to a fool, a Murkh, as willful, filled with pride, and one who speaks thoughtlessly out of haume, ego consciousness. So what is being said here is that countless people live in this state of spiritual darkness, andkhor. Asank chor haramkhor. Countless thieves who usurp from others. Again in Gurbani, and we have to remember that a lot of these terms have their definitions from within Gurbani, which is where we should be looking for them. So a thief, a chor, in Gurbani has multiple connotations. But essentially, it signifies somebody who's living in opposition to hukam, a person who's entangled in attachments and whose life is being run by the five evils. So broadly speaking, it is a state of deceit, self-deceit. And here it is being used for those who exploit the fools, the murkhs, that we've just been introduced to in line 1. And these chors are referred to as haram khors, wretched scoundrels, because they rob and they mislead others. Asank amar kar jahe jor. Countless the tyrants who rule by force. Now the term amar can mean immortal, and it can also signify brutality. Likewise, the word jor can be used to mean force or to join together. Both of these meanings appear to be applicable here. The line could be pointing to the yogi who desires immortality through the use of force, the force of physical and psychological exercises, or it could also be applied to those who convert others by the sword. Asank galwad hatya kamaye. Countless cutthroats profit from slaying. Similarly, many cutthroats sacrifice others, humans and animals, for their religious profit. And we have to remember that Guru Nanak, in his travels, encountered both kinds. Asank papi paap kar jaye. Countless sinners keep on sinning. So the notion of sin and sinner has centered around the execution of defined religious practice and action. And the prevalent thought at the time that Guru Nanak arrived on the scene, and even today for that matter, was that it was considered a sin to kill a Brahmin. An atonement was to be had according to a prescribed ritual. Now, this is a notion that Gurmat rejects, because in Gurmat, sinning is living as a murkh, mentioned in the very first pankti. Asank kudiyar kude firaye. Countless the deceivers who are weaving deceptions. So a courier is essentially one who deceives or swindles others. And this is an activity that most of us would be very familiar with, especially in our own religion. And perhaps one of the most proficient con jobs that we've seen and witnessed that seems to still pay off is to trick others into believing that those who are still living, can benefit the dead. And then the same person acts as the middleman, receives samagri, as they say, goods and offerings that somehow get delivered to those who are dead. We see that around us all the time. Asankh Malesh Malpak Khai. Countless impostors who eat filth. Now, the word Malech is rooted in the idea of impure speech, or someone who adopts another's language. In this case, the adoption of non-Sanskritic languages, or someone who doesn't subscribe to Vedic teachings was considered a Malech, a foreigner, a barbarian. So, again, in Gurmat, though, the idea of a Malech, of an impure one, implies one who has strayed from the path of hukam and lives like an animal, driven by sensual pleasures, which are here equated to eating filth, malpak khana. Asankh nindak sir kareh par. Countless slanderers are burdened by their calumny. A slanderer is one who violates the principles of community living. And the motives of such behavior can be varied. There could be an underlying envy that a person feels, malice, desire for revenge, any of these motives. But again, we see that Gurbani uses the term very broadly and very strongly reprimands or castigates people who bear tales of others. It denounces individuals who live in denial of the Creator within. Nanak Neech Kahe Vichar. The lowly Nanak offers his views. That's one way to look at this pankti. Another way to look at it is that Guru Nanak concludes his reflection and makes his views known with humility, or Guru Nanak is reflecting on those engaged in lowly activities. One would think that the Guru probably is saying these in all humility. So as in the previous Pauri, the refrain in this Pauri speaks to the central theme. And these Pauris, as we've said, are clustered together. They are clustered passages. And the theme, again, is the immensity of creation, which is beyond human reckoning. The necessity of recognizing hukam, which is the voice of the Creator within. And the Pauri then concludes with an affirmation and a salutation. Vare na jama ek var. I cannot be a sacrifice unto you. Vare na jama, also said as balhar jana. In other words, submitting, saying that I do not have the mental capacities or any other capacities to take an estimation of you. And your wish is my command. Jotut pave, sai palikar. You, the eternal, the abiding and formless one. And this is quite literal because it is the command of one's consciousness, of one's highest self, which is being spoken of here. Now, this passage can be read and understood, we believe, in multiple ways. One is to read this as a list of undesirable elements: thieves, tyrants, cutthroats, slanderers, liars, and criminals who roam around the world. But doing that would beg the question, why would the Guru state the obvious? That's something that we observe and perhaps belong to one of these groups. So might there be another significance to this. Perhaps he's pointing to the hypocrisy of religion, or trying to tell us that the world consists of good and evil, virtue and vice, and both are integral to the natural order. Hukam. Another significance could be that all of these should be viewed as descriptive symbols of an individual's own propensities for evil. All of these evils lurk within the human mind, and no one is an exception except for those who look to Gurmat and adopt the way of the Gurmat. So the lesson that we can learn from this is that we live in a world of opposites, and our mental structures, our ego consciousness, are by default bound by this narrow vision. So we must accept the good and the bad as part of the grand cosmic scheme, but we must act from the fulcrum of Hukam by rising above these dualities. We leave you with these thoughts until the next segment. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.